Croeso, hello, welcome back to Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. Well, it's the week of love, Nath, and Parky has given me a semi. Wrexham's win over Bolton on today's podcast, bringing the latest stadium news and look ahead to our double header against Northampton and Leyton Orient as well. All that and more on today's show.
Rob, Ryan, Red.
Nath, the Vertu Trophy is becoming a virtue for Wrexham. Victory over Bolton into the semi-finals, dreaming of a Wembley finale. How are you feeling? Have you got Vertu Trophy fever? Why did we not record last week, I suppose?
We were both. Was it a competition of who was more bedbound? Who was more ill with the flu? And yeah, not been that ill since probably before the takeover, or at the very, very start of the takeover. So now I'm feeling a lot better. Thank you very much. How are you feeling? Because you were also pretty worse for wear.
Yeah, I think I might have a case of promotion fever, mate. I think that's what it is. We've both been down the dumps. Thank you to everyone who did send messages, and to those of you who said we should effectively get on with it. It would have. I mean, the quality of this podcast is pretty poor anyway. If we were coughing and spluttering sort of every minute or so, I do think it would have been pretty unbearable, even by our standards. So yeah, we've passed our fitness tests. We both watched the game against Bolton on Tuesday night. I think we are fit enough now, aren't we, Nave, to record?
Yes, yeah, I feel like we're probably halfway to being Andy Cannon. That's about as good as it'll get for us, I think. So yeah.
What did you make of the game then on Tuesday? Obviously, a few changes. The team did enough. Bolton, I thought, were quite comfortable in the first half. It was a very low quality match, but we had that decisive moment, of top quality in the final end with Cannon's goal. They could have equalised and McAtee hit the post. I know they were furious with the referees, as every team that's ever lost to us have been. I felt like we did deserve to win it by the end, though. I think at half-time, I would have been, I wouldn't really have envisaged it ending the way it did, because I thought we were quite comfortable after the break. But, that's the squad depth that we flex. I thought Parky played the sort of team he should have played, gave enough players sort of minutes, rotated quite well as well. And yeah, what did you make of it?
It was a strong team, I thought. He was always going to give certain players a chance at rest and rotation. But, you looked at it and you saw Lewis Brunt in there, you saw Okonkwo in there, you saw Dan Scarr in there, O'Connor, all of those have played plenty of minutes. Ryan Longman, who was player of the round in the last round, got 2 assists against Port Vale. It's been interesting, really, that we had this big debate about where's he going to play? Could he play further forward? Is he going to replace McLean on the left? It's actually on the right that he's been used so far, almost exclusively. It's kind of Anthony Ford's gone out the door. Luke Bolton's obviously down the pecking order, and it's kind of Barney and Longman are sharing duties at that right wing-back spot. He played Longman. George Evans in there again. It's been a really sort of slow burn of a season for him. He's back in there. I thought he played well. Cannon, did what he does. Gets key goals, really, really key moments. Brilliant finish for the goal. And yeah, I thought first half we were off it. But listening to Parky after, it was quite interesting that he said it took us a while to calibrate how Bolton were playing. That the Bolton set up and played in a different way that they weren't expecting. And maybe that was a trick from Stephen Schumacher. But I thought once we settled into it in the second half and we made that quadruple sub, I thought we sort of, at least for a small period, took control of the game. And yeah, we weren't at our best, but we're at a point in the season now where you just need to win games. All about results now. In the league and the cup, it's less about putting on, amazing, fabulous, eye-catching performances and just grinding out through the kind of the run into the season now.
Yeah, it's very difficult in the fact that they've got a new manager as well, so they were obviously trying to sort of mix things up. I did want to touch upon the sort of tactical approach Bolton adopted. It's quite similar to the Stevenage game that they came with three narrow strikers, effectively, now three narrow forwards, so they could, from dead ball situations or when we had goal kicks, basically man mark our centre backs. We know Okonkwo's distribution is lacking anyway. It meant that we were having to go long, and then we were getting sort of drawn into these sort of midfield battles for the ball from the long distributions. Yeah, it's just maybe a point going forward to have teams slightly figured out how to beat Wrexham. I know there's not much of a sort of evidence of it so far, because it's only Stevenage who've done so at home this season, but it felt quite notable to me that Bolton basically went for a similar blueprint themselves, and maybe one to look for when we do play them in the league. You'd expect that to be a closer contest as well. In terms of our own tactical approach, we're not going to change that, are we? We've been through it so many times. We're not going to dominate proceedings against very good footballing teams. That's just not the way we play. And what's the point of having possession for possession's sake? It's stylistic. It feels like a mute argument quite a lot, because we just know it won't change, and we're very good at what we do under Phil Parkinson. But in terms of the tactical approach, do you have any concerns at all, Nath? Or, like I said, did the result justify the means anyway?
I was quite concerned that we hadn't had a shot after an hour. That was quite worrying, I have to say, because it felt like we just lacked ideas. There were some nice touches by Mo Fowl, but again, I thought he struggled to sort of, influence the game enough. I thought Marriott, there was that moment very, very early on, like almost one of the first phases of play, where Marriott is chasing down Baxter and the Bolton goalkeeper takes a really poor touch and almost slips, and Marriott would have been in tapping in the opening minute. I thought Marriott looked quite sharp, but again, really struggled to give the Bolton defence much to worry about. And again, Longman and Revan couldn't really get us up the pitch, which is obviously key to the system. I was less worried by Bolton. I know what you're saying about, there's an element of them figuring us out, but at the end of the day, Okonkwo's made a couple of good saves, but they didn't score, and we got a clean sheet at home again. I know you can say, well, that's a warning sign that might not happen again when we meet on the 1st, and there'll be some different players. I know Aaron Collins came on. I know John McAtee came on. They'll almost both be starters, you would imagine, in that game on the 1st. But then so would Sam Smith and Jay Rodriguez, probably. And I don't know. I think there were positives. I'm looking at the positives of Evans, of Cannon, of Brunt again. I thought was really good. Clean sheet for Arthur. Can't go amiss after some recent ropey performances. I thought Sam Smith was lively. Had a volley from the left, which would have been spectacular if that had gone in, Van Basten-esque. But yeah, at this point in the season, I'm looking at positives, and I think having players that haven't played loads come in and help get you to a semi-final, a home semi-final, you one win from Wembley, I think that can only be beneficial when you're going into these games now where it's Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, early kickoffs. A lot of, most of them are on Sky as well, so they're all at random times, early on Saturday, night game on Tuesday, then it's the Sunday Sky game, then it's a Wednesday night game, then it's an early Saturday game. So you're going to need everyone now to drag us over the line, whether that's for a league and cup double, or promotion and cup double, or one or neither, whatever it ends up being. We're going to need everyone.
In terms of that rotation, then, like I said, I think most of it can be understood on Tuesday. I was still surprised to see Okonkwo start that game, really. I think that is, once again, a reflection of the fact that Parky doesn't see him as untouchable in goal after the performances we've seen in recent weeks. Again, if Callum Burton was fully fit, then I think there would be a real debate there in terms of goalkeeper going forward. Like I said, hopefully that clean sheet can give Okonkwo the confidence required, and hopefully we can now see him have that run of games in the league, because I think he's the better goalkeeper out of the ones we've got available. Mo Farah I want to get onto as well, kind of separately, on the fact that look, we can't give him praise when we were criticising people like Ollie Palmer for the same lack of any sort of goal threat whatsoever. And yes, there were some nice touches, some nice spreading of the play. But this is like what, £750,000 striker. He needs to be offering at least some sort of goal threat. And then in terms of team selection as well, this is kind of the overarching theme, Nath, is at what stage do you play your strongest lineup in the Vertu Trophy? I mean, is that the Peterborough game now? Do you see it as, look, we are in such a good position to get to Wembley, to have this huge showpiece event, we've got to go full strength against Peterborough? Or do you still play this rotational side for that semi-final and have more risk of getting knocked out, I suppose?
It's a tricky one because you know my thoughts. I'd love to get to Wembley. I think trophies are important, and I think they are tangible, and people can't take them away from you once you win them, whether you care about the Vertu Trophy or not. But you have to look at the games coming up as a whole. So you've got Northampton now. Now we'll be expecting a couple of changes from the team that beat Bolton on Tuesday night to the one that plays against Kevin Nolan's Northampton on Saturday. You've then got that tough game at home against Leyton Orient. You know, they are one of the form teams in the country. And they nearly upset Man City in the FA Cup. They swatted aside Mansfield on Tuesday night, going great guns on the edge of the playoffs. Probably only Charlton are the ones who are also right up there in terms of the form guide. So Leyton Orient's a really tough game, only a couple of days after playing Northampton. You've then got a little bit longer than you play on the Sunday, Mansfield. And then you're playing Peterborough, and then you're playing Bolton in the early kickoff. So it really depends. I mean, how different is our quote unquote strongest team to the one we saw against Peterborough? And if we put out that same team that we did against Bolton, is that good enough to get past a Peterborough side that are really, really struggling? I look at it and go midfield of George Evans, Andy Cannon, Elliot Lee. Back three of Scar, Brunt, and O'Connor. Wing backs Ryan Longman, Seb Revan. I mean, then we're not talking scrubs here. No offense to some others that haven't played in that I haven't named there, but Arthur Okonkwo in goal. All right, maybe you need to do something a bit different in attack. Maybe Marriott and Farl is not the way to go again. But the actual rest of the team, I don't really think you can sniff at too much, to be honest.
I guess, like I said, we'll go on to attack now then, because we have mentioned Mo Farl, you mentioned the lack of quality really in the final third that we had at all on Tuesday night. And it was that quadruple change that gave us the lift. We looked so much better when that happened. It felt to me like that was Park as well saying, look, Smith and Rodriguez are the partnership now. That's it for the rest of the season. We've seen glimmers of what they can do together, but just their intelligence, the way that they battle for the ball, they're both proper Parky players in the sense that they're robust, physical athletes. They also have that sort of dark heart side to them. They know how to frustrate opponents. They win free kicks. They suit the style of play. They suit our long ball tactics, and we can embrace that with those two in attack. Still, you do wonder in terms of actual goal threat, don't you? I know Smith is the fourth highest goal scorer in League One. When we bought him from Reading, he looked quite good against Crawley as well. Rodriguez isn't going to score a lot of goals, but he has just got that smarts about him. And you only need one goal to win a game. We don't need to be scoring 3 or 4 every single week. It would be nice if we did as a bonus. But for you, is the issue in attack just down to a lack of quality, or is it a lack of service as well? I find it very difficult to put my finger on at times because, like we said, Farl and Marriott shouldn't be as lackluster a partnership as they were. Is that just because they're not really used to playing together? Do you think? What did you make of it?
It's tricky. I don't think it's as cut and dry as. Okay, because we didn't have attempts on goal for an hour. We couldn't get the ball into Marriott and Farl and have them be threatening on the half turn. Or there was one moment where Farl goes scampering clear down the right. They end up making quite a good tackle, Bolton, to snuff that out. But it's been an issue that's plagued us all season. Really, you need goals from midfield. Barney's been a brilliant facilitator of goals, but down the right, that is fairly one-dimensional. You're going to hope that Smith gives you that just a little bit of extra quality. I thought he did look bright at Crawley, and it was funny. Just the last time we recorded, it was all about answering the call, like going out and getting players, going out and the players that are already there answering the call, and the execs and everybody just kind of up in their game, up in their level. And look, it took a 95th minute header to beat Crawley from Elliot Lee of all people. Andy Cannon's come up with some big goals at Port Vale. I was really chuffed to see Harry Ashfield as well really step up and score a big goal for us. Ryan Longman, you'd probably say, answered the call that night. 2 great assists. If Farr gets on the score sheet, Lee gets on the score sheet, and then Andy Cannon against Bolton. So I don't know. I think in the summer, I'm not trying to look too far ahead here, and there's still a lot of football still to be played. But I think the summer will give Parky and the coaching staff a bit more time to work out quite where the disconnect was in that final third of the pitch. Is it just the patterns of play, the build-up? Was it just a lack of quality? If they look back through games, was it the fact that we didn't even create the chances, or was it we were being wasteful? It doesn't necessarily feel like we've been wasteful. It feels like we just haven't really had the chances to waste. Yeah.
I'd also say as well, I think a key contribution to the win was Ollie Rathbone coming on, who again, you take it back to Bolton away, second game of the season, he was playing off the striker, looked lost. we didn't know how to use him. And again, as the season's progressed, we now know how to use him. We now know his quality and how to sort of just give him that little bit of freedom. He had so much energy, so much drive, so much determination in midfield. And yeah, Rathbone's transformation's been exceptional, really. In terms of other contributions then, like I said, George Evans, Gorgeous George, was doing what he does best. Quite a effortless performance, I thought, in centre defensive mid. He had an ambitious effort that went wide of goal. Andy Cannon, of course, that little bit of quality, that moment. I think we spoke about that on the last podcast, that of the central midfielders, he's probably the one who can not only break the lines and do the dirty work as well, but also has that little bit of attacking quality. And it's easy to take for granted just how important Andy Cannon still is to this Wrexham side. He might not be a starter anymore, but he's the midfielder you'd back to score a goal probably the most. Maybe Elliot Lee's just ahead of him in that regard, but Andy Cannon's not far behind. And then as well, Nath, Max Cleworth came on at the end as a central midfielder and looked quite good, quite combative. He is a centre-back long-term, so it's another string to his bow that he looks quite comfortable as a central midfielder. And interesting as well that, that defence had done well enough to contain Bolton for all the match already, so there was no point changing it just for the sake of freshening up the legs. But, I was happy to see those midfielders play. And, we love seeing Gorgeous George play in the Wrexham shirt, don't we, at the best of times. I just wanted to know as well what you thought of the midfield balance. And I think the question I want to throw it forward to really now is, what is your strongest midfield for the remainder of the season? Because we know everyone will have their opportunities, but Parky needs to know his strongest 11, doesn't he? What is the right midfield makeup for you that gives you the balance of being able to do all the hard work out of possession, but also has the quality to break down opponents when you've got the ball as well?
It's tricky because I'm big on Andy Cannon. I think he has a skill set that is unmatched, really, in the squad. I think there's players that can do similar things, but he just has a kind of an ability that is fit for 2 roles almost. He's got good legs and good energy in there, but he's a great finisher. And you saw his close control against Port Vale, where he was able to kind of dance in and out of players and then finish into the bottom corner. This one against Bolton, he's managed to dummy the defender, shift it onto his right and curl it. The keeper doesn't even move for it, But on the other hand, I don't think Andy Cannon is in your best midfield. And that's just because I think you do need a Dobson or a Matty James. For me, that would be Dobson. I always feel I prefer Dobson to be that deeper lying
You see it as
midfielder.
either or rather than both, because
I
obviously
see
we've
that.
seen both, haven't we? At times
Yeah,
this
I
season.
see that as I just think in your best midfield that gives you an array of skills. I think George Dobson as your base of the midfield, I think is the best option. I then think probably Ollie Rathbone next to him in terms of just your best midfield has to include Ollie Rathbone now. That's sort of a moot point. Great engine. He changes games. I did think he was quite slack with some of his passing last night, but again, you can sort of forgive that at times. It was a low quality game, I thought. And then it's really tough, isn't it? Because you say, well, do you go with Elliot Lee in that midfield? Are we going off what he has done previously rather than what he is showing us now? But I still think just his quality and his ability means that he really should be in there. And I just think we don't have someone who can be that sort of conduit between the attack and the midfield. And I think he is best placed to do that. So
There
for
was that
me, it would
moment as well, wasn't it, on
yeah.
Tuesday night? I can't remember who had the effort, but there was that. It was on the left-hand side in the second half where Elliot Lee sort of sped up the move. Like he held the ball up, gave it to someone. They made an overlapping run into the box, had a shot at goal. Might have been Tom O'Connor.
I feel
I
like I
can't
remember
remember.
it. Tom O'Connor, yeah. He was like
Yeah,
being pulled back, really.
yeah, but that's what Elliot Lee does well, isn't it? There's almost this unquantifiable just sort of nous that he has where he always speeds up the attacks, he holds the ball up and links up with other players so well. And it's the modern nature of football, isn't it? That we are so driven by pure stats at times. It's all about goals and assists, and you can get sucked into sort of a long wormhole sort of on social media where you just look at all these XGs and stats, and this is what the player does. These are the cold hard numbers. But Elliot at least still offers a bit more than that, doesn't he? He does that unquantifiable link up play. He does the dirty work at times. He just gives you that lift and that attacking impetus. And so often, a game can spark to life because Elliot Lee does something, or he's involved in some move that brings others into play, or he drops deep and creates the space for someone else to run into. I agree with you. It's a really interesting conundrum because I feel like at some point we need to either evolve the way we play or potentially move on so that Elliot is a squad player rather than a star player. But I feel like at this moment in time, he is still so crucial to everything we do.
Rich, it does feel though that the way the benches are operating now we obviously have had 3 strikers on the bench for a while. That might change now and become 2 strikers on there because I say that to say that okay, we go with that midfield. It means you don't start Matty James. It means you don't start George Evans. It means you don't start Andy Cannon. And often the case is that some of these players are not even making the bench, which seems unbelievable, especially with someone like George Evans. His versatility could obviously slot into the back line as well. And so it does get to a point where you say, okay, do you prioritize having somebody like George Evans on the bench over a Dan Scarr or an Owen O'Connell because he can play multiple positions? Andy Cannon, is he a must on a bench over Matty James? Especially if you've got Evans, does Evans' versatility mean that unless you start Matty James, he's not in the squad? What do you do now? Obviously, Ollie Palmer elected to stay amid interest. Paul Mullin's battling against an injury. And injuries, unfortunately, will make decisions slightly easier for Parky because there's a lot of players that want to be involved and want to be starting, want to be on the bench, and they're not always going to be able to do that. Ollie Palmer on Tuesday night was there, but was not a factor, was not in the squad, and that will become more common now because you are going to go with Smith and Rodriguez. You probably are going to go with Fletcher on the bench. Fall, you're now wondering really realistically how many more minutes is he going to get this season? How many more minutes are we going to see that Rob Ryan Red sponsored home shirt in action? Probably not a lot. And so yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious not only who the starters become, and if they stay as they are. Ryan Longman, another. Barney, you can't imagine on the sidelines for long. That would mean Longman would have to be one of the bench spots. What does that mean for Revan? There's a lot of squad building. There's a lot of players there that are pushing, and not a whole load of games for them to push into.
It is interesting, isn't it, in terms of where those opportunities have to dry up for some players now, because the stakes get higher and higher. And we'd love to know as well your thoughts on that. robryanred@gmail.com, robryanred on YouTube as well. If you're watching the video, let us know. I think, Nath, a very long convoluted way, have we said that our dream midfield there, which can be dictated by opposition, is effectively Dobson, Rathbone, Lee then?
Yeah, I'd say that that'd be, in most circumstances, that would be my first choice.
Yeah, and then depend on opposition and injuries and things like that. Okay,
Sure.
Let us know as well. Hypothetically, Wrexham are playing at home, 3-man midfield. What is your dream midfield? Let us know. Like I said, you can get us on the socials at robryanred@gmail.com and on the YouTube channel. Now, if we did promise to read out some emails this week, before we get into the other parts of the show, we will read some of those out. Again, apologies, because we promised you this mailbag issue, and then we were feeling ill. It's
the
just
universe said no to the mailbag. The universe said absolutely not.
This is an interesting one from Kyle Chapman, and it's something I did want to touch upon, and it's about Ryan Longman. He said, Ryan Longman was great against Port Vale. He looks to me like more of a winger than a wing-back. Going forward, is this something Parky can coach, or will it just become more of a calculated risk to play him in that position? That is a very fascinating sort of debate, because I agree, he is a winger. He is not a wing back whatsoever. You don't have the same defensive protection. Barney is better suited to that wing back role, and it's interesting we've only seen Longman on the right so far, really. What do you see going forward, Nath? Because again, that would imply to me that there's got to be a lot of games where Longman just can't really start because we need the defensive cover, or do you think it is just something you cater for?
I would argue
that you're going to be quite vulnerable, because we've criticised Wrexham's vulnerability at right wing back already this season. No man with a winger there.
Yeah, but I would argue that Ryan Barnett was a winger when he came in, and he was not a wing back. He's obviously worked very hard on adding that level of defensive steel to his game. But we keep talking about we need more attacking output from these wide areas. Something's got to give. If you are flawless defensively as a wing back and you're brilliant attacking, you shouldn't be playing football in League One. That's the fact. If you're that good as Ryan Barnett is going forward, and Ryan Longman can be, and you're unbelievable defensively, you're just a lock, straps, as they say in American football, then why are you in League One? You wouldn't be. So something's got to give. Now, I think there were moments on Tuesday night where Ryan Longman did look susceptible in behind. He did look defensively a little bit vulnerable. But you have to trust that what they've done with Ryan Barnett, they are also able to do with Ryan Longman. It's just very curious to me, having given Barney a new contract. Ryan Longman's coming from the Championship for about $500,000. Is that Ryan Longman's only route into the team? Because Ryan Barnett's in contention to be one of our players of the season. I'm assuming he'll be battling Ollie Rathbone for that. So I'm just curious long term what that means for the two of them. If it's just a depth situation, or has Ryan Longman come in to eventually usurp Barney as the guy at right wing back?
Do you think it even maybe gives you a bit of protection in case there was an offer for Barnett this summer then? And then we've heard the rumours of interest from the Championship. I think it works both ways, in the sense that a player can't be undroppable in the sense they need to have competition within the squad, but maybe you also need to have competition in case, look, if a big offer came in for Ryan Barnett, there's going to have to come a stage where Wrexham do sell some assets. And I know it's been a luxury of the takeover that we don't lose our best players anymore. Trust me, if you're a new Wrexham fan, you used to keep a good player for a season at most, and then they'd be gone. And we've got so used now to being able to keep our best players, to retain them, to build a squad. But does does they get a stage there? If we're saying that Barney could be Wrexham's player of the season, if Wrexham didn't go up this season,
what's he worth, Rich? What's Ryan Barnett worth? What I always say, people saying that he could go. What kind of offer? What's he worth?
Well, what did Kone's valuation at Wickham? What will we establish that to have been?
So they ended up bidding, I think, 7 million.
Yeah,
and I got rejected.
I'd say Barney is maybe. I mean, this is just me. I've not played Football Manager for a long time. I've not had an EAFC career mode either. I'd say Barney is probably a couple of million. In sort of
someone comes along with 2 million, you just say thanks very much.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I suppose it depends how you go and replace them. If you're looking at players like Longman who've come in and looks decent, I think it is just. This is an overarching theme where I think we're getting to the stage of the Wrexham journey now, and there's still a lot of it left. But we're getting to the stage now where we know that some past heroes have to go. We're also getting to the stage where players might have to be sold, and that's not been the case whatsoever. Every exit we've had so far during the takeover has been on our terms, really.
Right.
And there will come a stage, just because of the natural progression going up the leagues, where that's going to have to flip. And I think that is part of the thinking of Ryan Longman, is that worst case, you've got a very, very good option now as an alternative to Ryan Barnett. But ultimately, you've also got someone who could replace him if required. And this is all hearsay. This is just us speculating for the sake of it. And it's a point that I think does need to be made. But in a long way, I mean, again, we've not really answered the question that Kyle sent in there about can Ryan Longman be taught to play at wing back? But
yes, I think he can. I think it's the answer to that, Kyle. I think you've seen Barney really develop, and I think Longman can be put on a similar trajectory. It's a very specialist position. I think Luke Bolton maybe struggled to learn the intricacies because they're not the same. They are different positions. The demands on those positions are stark, in my opinion. And, but Ryan Longman's a talented footballer who's played at a high level. I would like to think that he more than possesses the ability to really learn and knuckle down and figure out a way to maximise his potential as a wing-back.
Another question here, Nathan, that we had emailed in. This is from Emma Roberts, who listens every single week to the podcast. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much.
This was sent in a couple of weeks ago now, so it might not be as relevant, but it's still worth discussing. And again, it is another uncomfortable home truth. This one about Paul Mullin. Emma said, just to say I'm a big fan of the show, listen every week. I've been watching Wrexham for the last 35 years, and the ride the last few years has been fantastic. When we got promoted to League One, I will admit I would have been happy just to stay up, but we've exceeded staying in the top three for most of the season now, and we're in a position where we could realistically get promoted. Whether we're ready to go up or not, I'm not sure as in terms of team and infrastructure. On the team lately, I don't understand why Phil Parkinson persisted with Elliot Lee up front for as long as he did. Like I said, I think that's now kind of been addressed with Smith and Rodriguez signing anyway. And with the options we have on the bench, they must be thinking why they've not been having the game time instead. What do you make of the Paul Mullin situation? He has served us so well since he came to us. I do think he will come good eventually. He can play at this level. He just needs the game time to get back to his best. And we need to set up attacking rather than defensively, as we have done at home so often this season. So yeah, that's Emma's thinking. This, I think, was pre-Crawley. So obviously we've added 2 new strikers anyway, which I think has changed the dynamic quite a bit. Paul Mullin is just the eternal question for Wrexham fans at the moment because, we love the guy. The situation, the official line is that he's had this injury issue, and that that's a contributing factor why we've not seen him as much as we thought we would. There was murmurings that he could potentially have left in January, whether that would have been permanent or on loan. When he does come back to be fully fit, well, he's surely only dropped 2 places further down the pecking order with Smith and Rodriguez signed. So what happens now is, are we just in the end game for Paul Mullin as a Wrexham player?
So hard to say, isn't it? Because this is the type of thing that can really come back and bite you on the ass.
How good would it be if it did? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, we'd be chuffed. We'd be first to it. We're nothing more than eating humble pie on this podcast. I was so strong on 2 topics at the beginning of the season: that Bolton were rubbish, and Ollie Rathbone didn't fit. Now, one of those I think is still true. One of them definitely is not. But on Mullin, what is he now? Fifth choice of the strikers? I think you can probably say you've got Smith ahead of him. Definitely you've got Smith ahead of him. You've got Rodriguez ahead of him. I think you've got Fletcher ahead of him. And I think you've probably got Marriott ahead of him. And then you probably think then it's Mullin, then it's Farl, and then now it's Palmer.
Which is ridiculous that we've been playing
choice.
our 7th choice so regularly this season, effectively.
Right. But I think obviously the dynamic now has changed, and it's just an interesting one heading into the summer. A lot of those strikers that are under contract that have been extended. It's not a sort of area of the pitch where there'll be, you'd imagine, where there's a lot of wiggle room for players that are under contract. I would imagine that Fletcher probably retires at the end of the season, and Rodriguez kind of fills that role. You would imagine they then go and get another striker in. So I don't know. I don't think things will get easier for Mullin. I don't think there'll be suddenly a flurry of minutes that come his way by sheer chance. You know, he is going to need, at this point, he's going to need injuries. He's going to need injuries to other players to get an opportunity. We're at a point where, you know, this time last season, he really came into his own. It was in February, wasn't it, when we played Forest Green? He scores that penalty. And then you're aware there was that Accrington game, he scores a hat-trick. And then he was just, you know, if we'd have had another month of the season, he probably would have finished at top goal scorer. He was just on a real purple patch, a real tear, and was central to us getting over the line as we did, eventually beating Forest Green in that barnstorm at the racecourse. I just think with Mullin, I struggle to see where those opportunities are going to come now. I'm sure he's still got a role to play, but is that role 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, in games where, you know, you're behind or you need to get up to the speed of the game? It's very, very tricky. You know, these are the kind of situations that strikers don't like. You think of Marriott when he was struggling at the back end of last season. You think of Farl. I mean, Palmer now will largely be an extra body in training. I really struggle to see whenever he'll get a go while everyone is fit. So, is it the end game for Paul Mullin? I wouldn't say it's the end game. Can't be, because he's under contract. He's still pushing to play. But I think I'm not as optimistic as other people that he's suddenly going to look like the Paul Mullin of old. I'm not so sure that will be the case.
I've wanted to manifest that and wish that all season. I think we have supported him where we can do, and I feel like every single week I say, start Paul Mullin, it will come good at some point, but the longer it goes on, there's just less evidence to suggest that, and there's fewer opportunities to actually give it a go, because like you said, it's all about the results now, and we just need to play our most optimum 11, really, and we know now that seems to be Rodriguez and Smith, and then like I said,
so
Fletcher.
Rich, what would be our optimum 11 and bench, like on a match day? Everybody's fit. I mean, most of those will be the same. So let's just say we can rattle a few off. We'd both go Arthur in goal, right?
Well, I think starting lineup would both be identical, really, in that we'd go Okonkwo in goal. That's certain. The back three, you would have. I mean, again, this isn't as important because one would go on the bench if not. But you're gonna have Max in there. Are you having Tom O'Connor or Brunt as yours?
I'd have Brunt, yeah. I'd have
and
Brunt.
Then O'Connell and so Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so Max, Brunt and O'Connell. Then you've got McLean and Barnett. We've got our midfield three of Dobson, Rathbone and Lee. And up front, you've got Smith and Rodriguez.
So, yeah.
And then you've got your bench. Do you go proper non-league and not have a goalkeeper?
Nah, yeah, you have a goalie on there.
You've got to have Mark Howard for now.
Yeah.
A centre-back, I guess we have Dan Scarr. Although I did like your suggestion, you could have someone like George Evans because they can play midfield as well. So you've then got to have Dan Scarr. Do you have another central defender? Do you have
You don't have two. You don't have two. You just have.
So then you move
how many spots are on the bench? 7.
7. We've got 2 at the moment. We've got Howard and we've got Scarr.
Right.
I'm feeling it sort of position-wise, so I'm going to go to a wing-back option now. Seb Evans not going to be the guy, so it's going to be Longman.
Yeah.
You've then got 4 more positions. Andy Cannon.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a Matty James on there as well? I mean, quality-wise, he should
over
be there,
George Evans.
That's the question, isn't it? I think you have one or the other. I would probably go George Evans for versatility, but I think it would be Matty James.
I think
just because
on our
he's
bench,
a higher quality player.
On our bench, it's going to be George Evans, I think.
Okay. And then you've got two more positions. And they'd be strikers. They'd be Marriott and Fletcher.
Yeah.
So there's your optimum Wrexham 11, Wrexham, 18 that would be.
Yeah.
And that's not got Matty James in it. It's not got Paul Mullin in it. It's not got Seb Revan. It's not got Mo Farr. It's not got Ollie Palmer.
Well.
Yeah, there we have it. Let us know again.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That obviously there'll be injuries in there, and there'll be ways that can be tweaked. But if you're one of those players that, now it doesn't matter who we name or not, but if you're one of those players that we didn't name there, you're going to struggle to get minutes. And if you're one of those players that we named on the bench, you're also going to struggle to get meaningful minutes, meaningful starts. But at least you're that step closer. Feels like you really are on the outside looking in if you're one of those players that, between us, we've just unanimously agreed is not a starter and is not really top of the pops for the bench.
What I just realised as well is surely by virtue that team we just named then didn't have Tom O'Connor in it.
No, so we just left Tom O'Connor out as well.
Exactly. Yeah, interesting. Again, let us know what is your optimum Wrexham 11 maybe and your 18 for the rest of the season. RobRyanRed@gmail.com. You can comment on the YouTube channel as well.
Right, Rich, talking about change and what the future might hold. Big announcement, big unveiling this week of the new designs, the populous designs for the 5,500 capacity Kop. Firstly, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see an image, but if you haven't, you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening, the designs are all over social media, and I'm sure you've seen by now. Rich, did you like it? What was your first impression?
First impression immediately was, I liked it. That was immediate first impression. Then I started to study it a bit more, and the sort of OCD brain of mine was like, why are they crooked teeth? Why does it look like
the Toblerone look?
Yeah, it's what I do like about it is that it is different. It does, have that sort of heritage angle to it with the brickwork, the Robin red brick. It's got, some nice touching details to it. Again, it's one of those things that you almost say you need to see it in person before you can make a proper fair assessment. But at that point, it's far too late to be too critical.
At that point, I think you might have. I think the cat might be out of the bag then. But yeah. Shall I give you some other people's opinions?
I don't agree with sort of the Facebook detectives who think there's clearly got a St. George's flag hidden in the architecture. I think you are trying to look for something that just isn't there. I much preferred how it looked from inside the stadium in those mock-ups. I thought it looked really nice. I loved the lights. I thought it looked really bright and a really nice space. I just thought the exterior was, the more I look at it, the less I like it, really.
Okay, well, I'm gonna read you out some responses, because we did put it up, some of the pictures, the mock-up designs, and we got lots and lots of replies, 83,000 views on that post. Richie Jones put, Marmite might be a good sponsor for the stand when built. Tolkien fan put, love the colour, not a fan of the obelisk-like structures. Simon Hall put, from the pitch, it looks great. I'm not too sure about the view from behind. Tony's put, it's very unique to Wrexham. Once a photo of this is shown to someone, they know immediately it's Wrexham. That's how uniquely it will scream Wrexham. It's not your typical boring design with square or round facade. Looks old, but so is Wrexham, so it's just appropriate. Bill Meacock put, not keen. Looks like a Christmas hat from the outside, and like everyone is still hoping to get soaked from the pitch view. Pass. Basher put, preferred the lump of coal, which obviously a reference to the AFL architect design, which was black and looked much more like a piece of coal. Baltimore Wrexham fanatic put, unique, connected to the community, club pride, audio consultants to make the Kop as loud as possible, get it built. Jose's put, not a fan of the uneven design, OCD is in overdrive just looking at it. Donna's put, like that it's not a cookie cutter exterior, but best to let the locals have their say. Beardy's put bring back AFL. The dude gives off cult temple vibes.
Yeah, we are a cult, aren't we? We're Wrexham
Yeah.
FC.
I mean, someone else just put the death camp design a bit strong. The ledge put think I preferred the original, to be honest. Steve's put not for me. Thought the other one was more imposing and more impressive. However, it's their money. I'll do 2 more then. This one, Blue Haynes has put. It will be interesting to see how this motif is carried on in terms of the badge on the outside, as other sides of the Kairos are renovated in the future. And which one can I do as the last one? Tim Redgrave's put, it's defo unique. I can't help but see a massive England flag in the middle of 2 posts at the top, though, which a few people did say. I would say that I was in the company of Mike Williamson and some other reporters, just to hear him out and listen to what he had to say about the design and why they went for such a bespoke design. I think you can also go on the council website and see the intricacies of it. It's a 5-level design, of which player service is rich, in terms of the dressing room I think you can see on the actual council plans a cryo chamber and all these other bits and bobs that'll be in there for players. That'll be on level 1, and there'll be a walk down some steps to the tunnel, which will come out of the Kop. I also think as well, it's interesting that it's come out in the Leader as well this week about how there'll be an installation of a new pitch at the end of the season, a £1 million pitch, which will deliver, undersoil heating. It's a hybrid pitch. The idea being that you can host more events on it, rugby union, international football matches, easier in terms of looking after it for concerts and whatnot. And also looking ahead to next season, the dugouts will be moving to the other side. There's already been some consultation done about that, but you want to host international events, you need, I think, is it Category 4 or UEFA Category 4 status in terms of you need bigger dugouts, you need a press conference facility, you need other bits and bobs. And so, yeah, if you're on the side where my parents sit, on the paddock side, you've known the dugouts to be there all that time, they will be moving across. So a lot of change in terms of the stadium, and I don't think it's being done all that cheaply. But this is legacy. This is what I think Emma was talking about in terms of in the email about. I'm not sure we're ready to go up. I'm not sure we've got the infrastructure to go up. Well, this would be a key piece. And really, when you think about it, Rich, it's the only stand where they'll get to do it from scratch, from the ground up. Everything else will require tweaks and amendments to the tech end, where you have a very small footprint behind that. Mould Road, you obviously can expand a little bit maybe, but again, that stand is difficult in terms of you have to think of the turf and other bits and bobs in there. The Lager stand, again, depending on the footprint, but the Kop, you can do it from scratch. You can build it the highest spec at whatever cost you want. So I think they're going for that. They're going for it. With this design, and we'll see. I'm just eagerly awaiting spades in the ground now, because we've heard these designs before, we've seen these fancy presentations and these plans. Need spades in the ground now. Need to actually see.
And again, as you mentioned there, for me, this is. I'm going to be very hypocritical here, because ultimately, I will nitpick the design. I'm not an architect. It's not my job. If I designed it, it would look absolute crap. But for me, actually having that movement and actually having something permanent there again, that's the real testament of the takeover. That is the legacy. That is showing how far we've come from the brink, because the Kop has always felt like this pipe dream and this conversation we have, but it's never actually felt like a realistic sort of conclusion was going to be made. And even with AFL sort of design coming and then going, and all the delays we've had with the Kop, it's just felt like it's just never going to be fixed. And when we finally have that permanent home, that shrine and that hub, and that just gateway of Wrexham, I know what was the Wrexham Gateway project originally, wasn't it? But having that symbolism, the Kop has always kind of mirrored the demise of the town, of the people, of the football club. It's just been that sad, sorry state of affairs rotting away before our eyes, and we've just not had the resources to fix it and to mend it. And now it's coming back state of the art. And look, we're gonna have our opinions. We're gonna be needlessly negative because we're whiny wankers, as our email said the other week. But this is what it's all about. And this is what's so wonderful. And we will talk and we will get tediously distracted by the mundanity of actual football. But for me, the two best things about the takeover are the fact that we will have a cop back. We will have a four-sided Kairos for hundreds of years to come. And that we don't lose all our best players anymore. We don't lose people like Max Cleworth. They are there. He will be wearing the captain's armband when we walk out of the cop for the first time, hopefully. And for me, we can talk about everything else, but I'm just so happy that it's getting so much closer, and I cannot wait to finally have it. I really can't wait. It's gonna be such a momentous day, and yeah, get me my seat sorted, mate. Get me dead centre in the new cop. I can't wait.
That's it. If you've got your season ticket, obviously you'll have first refusal in terms of renewals to make that move across. It's a really interesting one because obviously as the attendance goes up, the allocation that you require to give to away fans goes up as a result. So, what will this take Wrexham up to? Around 18,000. So you'd be due to give 1,800, is it? And they give about 1,200 now. Long term is the answer. If you can get it up to 22, 23, 24, is long term to put them in half of the tech end or put them in the tech end. I mean, do you give somebody an entire stand? I would hope not, but
that was definitely the original plan, wasn't it? I think they basically said because they can't, that it's that the stand will have no difficulty being able to actually renovate and build further upon, is you can't just leave the tech end as it is and just put the away fans in there. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. But let us know. Thank you very much to everyone again who did share their opinions on that one. Yeah, can't wait. Bring it on. Nath, Wrexham back in action this weekend then. The early kickoff away at Northampton. What changes would you make? Is this, another one of those tests where we'll get a clearer indication of how much we did strengthen in January, I suppose?
Yeah, I would probably I'd shuffle Lewis Brunt out, or I'd have Lewis Brunt on the left. I'd bring Max back in. I'd probably stick with Sky, away at Northampton. I mean, nothing against O'Connell, but you've got a clean sheet in there, big physical presence. I'm going back to McLean. I'm going back to Barney. I'm going back to sort of the people I know and can trust, really. I'm putting Dobson back in there and putting Rathbone in there. And then going with Lee, and I'm going from the off. I'm going with Smith and Rodriguez, just because you really need to give them as many reps as possible now to try and gel together, because you just never know when you're going to need them. Whether that is a Wembley final, for one of them to pop up for us, or whether that is a playoff game, a really key moment in a playoff game, because you're looking at it. Stockport going about their business. I know they ended up conceding late on, which was great news for us, away to Bristol Rovers. They fell to a similar fate as we did when we went to the Memorial. Charlton are going really, really well. Nathan Jones, a good manager at this level. Huddersfield, faltering. Or Leyton Orient, coming on really strong. But you go up against teams like Northampton, you think, well, you should beat them. They're winnable games. And yet they're fighting for their lives at the bottom. And Kevin Nolan, they know that. I mean, didn't they just went and they pummeled Huddersfield recently? I think it ended a bit closer. It might have been 3-2 in the end.
Yeah,
but
they
I
were
think
3-0 up.
3-0 up.
With
yeah,
20 minutes left.
Yeah, so they clearly got something about them. And when they came to the racecourse, one of the best parts about it was they just went for it. I remember, was it Tyler Roberts they had up front, and they just decided they wanted to be expansive, and they got picked off. And is that the game? I think that's the game where Barney got a hat trick of assists against Northampton. So let's see. I think it'll be much trickier at Six Fields, and we'll have to see. I think it's just really about now for us just grinding out games. And if you've got a George Evans on the bench to come on and shore things up and cover yourself as well at the back, that's what I'd be looking at now. You've got the pace of a Longman to come on and try and stretch the game when you need to, But I would go with players that have really served you well and that can just dig in and drag you over the line. Because it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how pretty the performance is, just about the result. We come out, we've beat Northampton, happy days.
Again, if you look at the form, I think we've both taken 7 points from our last 5 games ourselves in Northampton, but they've beaten Mansfield away, they've beaten Huddersfield at home, they drew 0-0 away at Wickham. They also lost to Bolton in there as well, but they have got a real sort of credible run of results in the last few games. I know their form overall has not been excellent this season. And you mentioned there as well, Nath, what you do realise at League One level, more so than we had at League Two level, was similarly to when we played Stevenage. Every team has 1 or 2 really good players and players who, on their day, stereotypically could rip you apart, could cause you some real problems. And I think that is the same once again for this Northampton team. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because these are those games that are the potential banana skins, and we talk about our home form all the time, but Northampton away, early kickoff as well. It fills me full of the dread.
I was going to say, they scare you, those early kickoffs, those 12:30s.
As do the Tuesday nights against the informed team in the division, which is Leyton Orient, who, have been excellent as of late. From this coming up week, though, Nate, there's a couple of Northampton away and Leyton Orient at home. What is the benchmark? How many points do we need for us to be in
4.
a good mood this time next week? Yeah?
4. I think if you get 4 points, I think you beat Northampton on Saturday and then you draw with Leyton Orient. I don't think that's being too defeatist. I think that's a good, and when you're looking back as well, that point we got at Leyton Orient early in the season, it was like we didn't play that well. That's aged into a pretty good point. I think they're a really good team under Richie Wellens, who is quite annoying in that he doesn't believe my curly hair is actual natural. But that's a story for another day, I think. Maybe let's see if we beat Leyton Orient on Tuesday. But I would say if we get 4 points, I can't really grumble at that. I'm sure I'll find a way, but at 4 points, I'm not grumbling.
I don't know why. I've got a feeling we'll draw with Northampton, but beat Leyton Orient. Still, get to the same destination with a different couple of results. But let us know. We're probably being way too pessimistic for some people, too positive for others. So, yeah, Wrexham are third in League One. We're in the semi-final of the Vertu Trophy. It ain't all that bad, is it? Thank you very much. Myself and Nath survived the illness.
We did.
Yeah, maybe it isn't all wonderful. Thank you very much to... Thank you very much to you, wherever you were in the world. Thank you, as always, for the support and for sticking with us when we had a rare week off. Thank you as well to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast, and to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic, who even threw in a little Valentine's sting in there as well today. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faye.